This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Good evening and welcome to the Blood Red YouTube channel following that crazy 3-3 draw with Brentford at the Brentford Community Stadium. Mohamed Salah getting his 100th league goal for the Reds. Curtis Jones with an absolute screamer, but the Reds unable to hang on. It's 2 points dropped in West London for Liverpool. On the day, Manchester City went to Chelsea and won. Manchester United lost at home to Aston Villa. So I suppose, Matt, within the context of the afternoon, even with this game in isolation, it is 2 points dropped for the Reds, especially after getting their noses in front a couple of times.
Yeah, without doubt. It wasn't a particularly good performance. It was a performance defensively that I think we've seen a few times under Jurgen Klopp, but not for a long, long time. I think when you look at that defence on paper, we thought that was probably as strong as Liverpool could be. Obviously, the back four is the back four that 9 people out of 10 would probably pick to play in this game. The goalkeeper is there. They've got Fabinho in front of them. It just doesn't make a huge amount of sense, really, in terms of some of the goals that they've conceded there. It was just really, really poor at times. And look, if you score 3 goals away from home, it's as simple as you should win the game. And Liverpool's defence is far better than what they showed there. They're going to have to bounce back quickly, though, because, Porto and Manchester City, I mean, if you give City in particular that sort of time and space and gaps and leave 3 players on Trent Alexander-Arnold at the far post, I mean, they'll put far more than 3 past you. It's really, really disappointing tonight.
We're getting a lot of people commenting away saying it was a sloppy performance and picking out a number of defenders. We got a comment on screen there from Daniel saying Virgil van Dijk was so sloppy. Where are you pinning the blame on this? Because, as we say there, I think falling behind was somewhat of a shock, but responded really well to that. But then taking the lead twice and spurning it's just so un-Liverpool-like.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, as soon as Curtis Jones scores that goal, you think that's it. They're just going to keep the ball and not do anything silly. And I think we see it a lot with Liverpool. They tread a fine line at times between just sort of doing enough to get the result, but not overexerting themselves. And I think tonight they tried to do that. They tried to be a little bit overconfident. And basically, it just came back to bite them, really. I think there was a couple of below par performances. I actually thought Andy Robertson was really, really good, to be honest, out of the back four. He looked really good, particularly on the ball. Obviously, defensively is slightly differently to offensively, but thought he was excellent at times. It was more the 2 centre-backs, really. Just don't know quite what it was. They didn't seem quite as sharp as what they have been. Maybe it's the fact that Joel Matip's not played for a few days, and he obviously gets thrown in against a team which is very much up for it, going for you. We've seen it in the past, though, with Liverpool, and not necessarily with Matip, but certainly in terms of you think back to the Watford game that I think Van Dijk and Dan Lovren lined up alongside each other for that one. There were times tonight where it kind of reminded me a little bit of that, where he was just getting a little bit overrun at times. And don't get me wrong, there was a few occasions where Van Dijk did his usual stuff. There was the one at the end where he catches up with Ivan Toney to stop Brentford from going on and winning the game. But I just thought generally, Matip in particular, but Van Dijk at times as well, it was just, it just wasn't quite on it. I think when you play the way that Liverpool play, you've got to be 100% right defensively to get that right. There were times tonight where the back four was a bit of a zigzag. One of them stepped up, one of them sat back. It just didn't quite look a coherent unit there. And it's a really, really strange one. Like I say, you look at, the results that have gone Liverpool's way earlier in the day. You look at the personnel involved. It just feels like a missed opportunity. And like you say, it's something that we've just not seen from Liverpool for a long time, particularly with these players. But even last season, they managed to get themselves over the line. They've got that mentality to go and win these sorts of games, but it just didn't quite happen for them there.
They also at times looked as though they were kind of caught in the eye of the storm, where they were trying, for example, it would either be a big chance or when some of the goals went in. I think it was after Janelt's goal. There was a corner where Van Dijk, you could see on the TV just screaming Joel at Matip and just looked so angry, which, as I say, just seemed so un-Liverpool-like and just unable to see it through. Perhaps there's a bit of credit to be given to Brentford. That's not really what we're here to discuss. And as you say, I think it's an extra kind of irritation for Liverpool, the fact that everything seemingly seemed to go their way earlier in the day, but all of a sudden now that's 2 points that Man City have clawed back.
Yeah, no, I mean, I take the point. Obviously, there's a few comments coming in about how up for it Brentford were, and the atmosphere was great, and that sort of thing. It's a game that they've waited a long time to have Liverpool or a team like that go to their stadium and be in the Premier League and all of that sort of thing. Saturday night under the lights, all the rest of it. But Liverpool are still fundamentally a far better team than what they showed tonight, and the frustration, I think, is that they did score 3 goals. That's the thing. They only had to make one fewer defensive error, and it wouldn't have been a problem for them. At the same time, I mean, I'm not even going to think about blaming Mohamed Salah for the drop points because of what he's done, and obviously did get his goal tonight. But if he scores the goal where he's one-on-one and hits the roof of the net again, that would have made it 4-2, and that would have been that. So obviously, it's not his fault. I think there was other missed chances. Diogo Jota, I know it's a brilliant save in the first half, but Diogo Jota should score that. I think Sadio Mane had a couple as well where he probably should have done a bit better. I think there was a header from Henderson at one point that should have been a little bit better as well. There were chances for Liverpool to go and score more than 3 today, but the bottom line is, for me, I don't think you should have to score more than 3. If you score 3 goals, that should be that. That should be the 3 points. And yeah, that's the frustration. Liverpool have just got to make sure that it's a one-off and it doesn't happen again. But yeah, I think it's probably a good job that they've got a game on Tuesday, because you don't really want a full week to sort of sit and stew on this.
Does it maybe show, we've spoken defensively, about maybe the deficiencies in having those 4 world-class options at centre-half that Liverpool are going to and have already started to rotate? We mentioned Van Dijk and Matip were maybe a bit sloppy. Anything, do you think, maybe down to the fact that players are coming in and coming out? Is it not a case of keep them in there and get them up to full speed and going? And until one of them breaks down, that's the partnership Liverpool stick with.
Yeah, look, it's possible. And I think that is something that will be discussed. I think there will be changes. I think there was always going to be changes no matter, what happened today. This won't change anything in terms of the plan for Porto and Manchester City. But I don't know. It's maybe slightly too easy to call it that. I know I said before, obviously Matip's not played for a little while and comes back in, and maybe that's not ideal for him. But at the same time, I mean, he was out for 2 or 3 months and then came back in for the first game of the season and looked absolutely brilliant. So he's done it in the past where he's had a break, not played at all, and then come back. And obviously, in this case, it's just not quite happened for him. So I just think it's a frustration. It's something that Liverpool are going to have to deal with quickly. But for me, moving forward, the changes are still going to be a thing. I think you've got to use the other options. Be interesting to see if it is Matt at midweek or if it's Joe Gomez, and maybe there's a bit of a redressing of the balance in terms of who is 1, 2, 3, and 4. But I think for me, against Manchester City next week, it's probably always been the plan that back 4 will be the back 4 for that one. And I'd be surprised if that changed. And equally, to be fair, I'd be surprised if they were that poor again.
Yeah, definitely. I think Jurgen Klopp is probably getting the hairdryer out and giving Liverpool, I suppose, a rollicking after that one. Liverpool conceding 3 goals, it just doesn't seem to happen all too often. And I suppose there will be a reaction to this. It is a frustration and a frustrating afternoon for Liverpool. But I suppose it goes back to what you said before about how they've kind of trodden that fine line for so long of making sure they don't overexert themselves and getting the 3 points. Goes to show actually what an achievement it was that season when the title was wrapped up, because there are going to be these kind of bumps in the road.
Yeah, there are, and I suppose that is one way of looking at it, isn't it? I think fundamentally for Liverpool, there's a real frustration tonight that they should have been able to do that, and maybe they're not at the same sort of standard as what they were in that game in that season where they just won game after game after game. But tonight, it really didn't need an exceptional performance to go and do that. It just needed for them to turn up defensively and be a little bit more sensible and just a little bit more sort of streetwise, and even, to be honest, in terms of the tactics from Klopp, once Liverpool go 3-2 up, for me, I think you've then got to have a think about maybe not taking Curtis Jones off, not going 4-2-3-1, keeping it going and being end-to-end. I think in hindsight, that might be something that he slightly regrets. I mean, I did tweet it at the time. I think Liverpool were so poor defensively that maybe they did need to go and get a 4th. And if they get a 4th and win 4-2, then maybe we don't talk about those tactics. But yeah, for me, that was a little bit of a strange one, that they didn't just kind of do what they've done at other times, in fairness, they've shown it in the past where a game has been end to end, but they've got their noses in front, and from that position, they've then been able to just hold it and see it out and quieten the crowd down and things like that. But they seem to get drawn into it, I think, a little bit. That's obviously what Brentford wanted. They wanted it to be open. They wanted to be able to get at Liverpool and use the crowd to sort of energise them. Unfortunately for Liverpool, they've allowed them to do that a little bit too much, I think, there. So, yeah, that's a slight frustration for me, is that once you go 3-2 up for Liverpool, against a team like Brentford, that should be it. That should be the end of the game, whether it's another goal or whether they just shut up shop and keep hold of the ball for the last 20 minutes or whatever it was going to be. I mean, that's the thing that I think they'll look back on and just think, similar to the poor defending, it was maybe a little bit of poor game management on and off the pitch there, I think.
Yeah, certainly the case. And of course, Porto and Manchester City to come. I suppose if there was any time for a wake-up call for Liverpool, who, as you say, from the outside, people looking in will say, actually, this is a reason why Liverpool maybe can't go and win the title this season. I suppose for others, it will be a case of, actually, is this the wake-up call that they need ahead of a very, very big week indeed?
Yeah, it's a massive week, isn't it? I think you've got to fancy them to bounce back with a real performance now against Porto. And I think if you're Porto, it's probably not the result that you wanted to see Liverpool have this weekend, because they're going to have to be up for it and bounce back quickly. And look, Manchester City's a completely different game. There won't be any of that complacency. There won't be any of the trying to tread the line of can they win it or just hold on and things like that. It's going to be a case of just going all out for it. Obviously, it's at Anfield as well, which I think is huge for Liverpool. So, yeah, that's going to be a huge game. I was massively impressed by Manchester City earlier on today. I thought they were really, really good against an excellent Chelsea team. So, yeah, look, it goes without saying Liverpool are going to have to be a lot better on Tuesday and on Sunday this week. But yeah, it's a frustrating start. But if they can get 2 wins from the next 2, this is very quickly forgotten. The trouble will be if there's a bit of a hangover from this and this continues, and then you go into the international break. So yeah, it's a big few days, I think, for Liverpool. It's not been the greatest of starts, but at the very least, plenty of room to improve.
Yeah, let's see how they bounce back. Jurgen Klopps press conference to come here then on the Blood Red YouTube channel. Stick with us for that. But from myself, Guy Clarke and Matt Addison, thanks for your time and your company here on The Debrief. It's bye for now.